This is Mary McCosker. The date is July 2nd, 2008, and I am interviewing Nancy Flood. Start it off, and I think it's going. So, what are your first childhood memories of libraries?
Probably the first thing that came to mind when I started thinking about this project was the Lafayette School Library. When I went, was a grammar school at the time, but I attended Lafayette School, so we went 1 through 8. And this was this kind of a long, narrow room near the office, probably in the original complex that was built when that school was first built. So there were about, in the 20s, yes. And there were about 3 classrooms and an office, and then this long, narrow library. And I have no idea how many books they may have had, but it was, as I recall, a small space. And I was not much of a reader initially until I discovered Laura Ingalls Wilder, and then it was like, oh my, yes, I have to know what's happening with this. And so I really connect that with that library. After that, though, I do recall the library, the Lafayette Library that was in the little cottage. And it was just a very, fuzzy image of that. But I recall being in there, and somehow or another I have a strange vision of going there from school on some occasions, and I don't really know why or if that's true. But whether it was a special project, or I know that when a new faculty room was built at Lafayette School when I was still there, that was near to the library, and so that may have affected it, and that may have been the reason that we went to the library, which of course was right next door, so it was no big challenge to go there.
It was kind of in front of the one that we have today, right?
As I recall, it was pretty close to the street, but I'm not really sure. I do remember being in there, and one of the things that always pops into mind, a girlfriend, Sandra Gibson, whose dad ran one of the local hardware stores, and Bob Brown, or of course we called him Robert at that time, were in there together, and who knows who else. And Bob said something about his how many ever great-grandfather being the founder of the town, and we laughed at him because, of course, I just knew him as a school friend, and his father and my father were friends growing up, and they attended school number 3 in Lafayette.
All right.
So it's kind of a funny thing.
Well, I won't ask you where you grew up because I know, but what awareness of community did you have while you were growing up in Lafayette?
Oh, well, the roots on my father's side of the family are very deep in this area. My great-grandfather was born in Moraga, or actually right about where Camp Lindo High School is, in that area. So a very strong feeling of connection with the community. And my grandma Flood actually used to lead us to believe that everybody in town was related in some way, and I kind of doubted that, but in some ways there were a lot of close relations.
Well, the dating pool was small.
Yes, I suppose that's true. I think that's true. So yes, I mean, very much founded in the community, and I was a pretty good listener growing up, and my grandmother would tell stories about different people, and of course, lots of first names, and I didn't always connect them with which families they were, and I wish I had asked more questions at that time, and maybe taken some more notes, because my personal experiences would have been, closer to the written history.
Okay. Where was your family home?
Where I grew up?
Uh-huh.
Well, my grandparents, my father's parents, lived on what was then Huff Avenue. It's part of Lafayette Circle now, right about where La Finestra was and is in that property. And when I was little, I was just right around the corner on what was then Oakland Avenue in a little rented cottage. And then my father was a carpenter, and he and my mother built house, which the property actually backed up to my grandparents, so it's still in existence. It's the redwood batten board house at the end of the cul-de-sac up the little road from Pitar's. And they built that house, and it was finished in 1946.
The little, where the shops are?
Where the
up
shops
that?
are, Pitar's is in the front, and then there's the shops, and at the end of that cul-de-sac, there's, right next to the shops is a garage, and that was my father's two-car garage and big workshop. And then
Brown's house was there too, wasn't it not?
towards the front, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Probably to the front, more closer to Pitar's at the time. And it was another thing that we didn't know for sure, but I do recall growing up that there were a couple of shrubs. There was a lilac and another shrub that were near the street at the time that, knowing now where the Brown's house was, were probably part of their garden.
Was he alive when you were alive?
Oh, no.
No, he died.
No, long before.
Okay.
Long before.
So the house was still standing though?
No.
No?
No,
Oh, okay.
that was long gone. I think it was gone in the 20s.
Okay, I didn't ever know when it was raised. So.
But Sybil Brown Wilkinson was a friend of my grandmother's. And so,
She had
that
stories.
connection, stories that way from that generation. And, but no, they built that house in the 40s, and
So it's still there?
it's still there. It
Typical
was rough cut redwood from Sonoma County and Richmond red bricks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when there was brickyard in Richmond, so that was kind of an interesting thing.
Talk about your education. You went to the Lafayette School.
Lafayette Grammar School, yes, 1st through 8th grade. And when I started school, of course, it was during World War II, and we had double sessions for at least 1st grade and maybe 2nd grade as well, so which was an interesting thing, trying to run 2 full classes of children in a school. And then I attended Acalanes High School, and DVC, which was then East Contra Costa Junior College, and then on to San Francisco State, where I earned my degree and my teaching credential.
So you never went too far from Lafayette?
No, and
like
then
me.
of course I taught in Lafayette for 41 years,
Yeah.
so
You must like the place.
I think I do, yes.
Okay, so let's see. So as an adult, what were your early community experiences?
Well, probably connection to my church, Lafayette United Methodist Church, and it was very interesting coming to teach in the district where I had gone through school, and some of my teachers were still teaching at the time, and some of them thought it was wonderful, and I was thinking the other day of another one who just thought it was pretty terrible that I think she probably didn't want people to know how old she was, because she said, don't ever tell anybody that I was your teacher.
Aww.
She had been my 3rd grade teacher.
Which schools did you teach at in Lafayette?
I taught my first year, I taught kindergarten most of my career. My
Mhm.
first year I had a morning kindergarten at the old Burton School
Mhm.
and an afternoon at the old Montecito School, which was an interesting experience, and traveling between those
Yeah.
2 schools.
So did you have Nick Barbieri as your
Nick Barbieri was the
principal?
principal at Burton
And
School.
then did you have Eleanor Deal? No.
No.
She wasn't at,
No.
she was at Spring Hill when I first was there.
Right, yes. So I taught there 11 years.
At Montecito?
No,
Oh,
at Burton.
Okay.
Well, the following year I had 2 classes at
Uh-huh.
Burton. And then eventually, somewhere along the line, you had only 1 class that you were fully responsible for.
Mhm.
But before that, my biggest class was 75. I had 40 in the morning and 35 in the afternoon.
Kindergarten.
Kindergarten, yes, and they were pretty active. And I did have an aide part-time for each of those sessions. A wonderful woman who helped me hold things down. But that was not a challenge. But I think, certainly early in my career, a big part of my energy was put towards doing the teaching and
Right.
preparing for that. So, and definitely that connection to Lafayette too, though, because there were, I actually had a child of someone who was a couple of classes before me at Akalani's, which was an interesting thing. And so you sort of meet people around. So when you meet people in the grocery store, I know they're connected with school, but I'm not ever sure if there's somebody I went to school with, or I taught, or their parents.
So you went after Burton, then did you go
to Spring Hill?
When it opened?
No, it was in the 70s.
Okay, right.
And so I was there 35 years. No, 30 years. Just 30 years.
Wow.
So that was a long time. And time flies.
So you were like me, you were there when it was built? Or
The
when
old
it was the old one, and then you lived through the construction, and then
Yes,
the new one?
and the construction was a very interesting thing.
Yes, I remember that.
We,
The slippery decks and the rain
it
with
was,
no overhangs.
oh yes.
It was a long time.
It was, yes, and the kindergarten was up on the upper playground, what had been the primary playground. So we had this path down this kind of edge of the construction, and it was an El Nino year that winter. It poured and rained, and the water just ran off that whole hill, and there was a swale in the path, and that filled up with water, and they had to run a path around it so children could get up and down. It was an interesting experience. And then the exciting part of that, I was involved with the planning for the kindergarten, the new building.
Oh, right.
So that was fun because
Those are nice rooms.
yeah, I questioned all the teachers in the district, if you could have whatever you wanted, what would you like? And the architect was wonderful. She really, helped us just to get what we felt we needed, and it's a wonderful complex. Particularly like the office space and the storage.
Being right at the beginning instead of way up in the back.
Yes, oh yes, that was a big improvement.
Really. How often do you personally use the Lafayette Library?
I'm not a big library user. I appreciate the library being there, and one of the things that I've always liked was when the Historical Society files were there, and I thought that was a wonderful connection of the Historical Society and the library working together on that. I've attended several activities and things that have happened there, but I guess I'm more of a book owner rather than a book borrower.
And you're almost closer to the Moraga Library, too.
That's true, very close.
How do you feel a library serves the community?
Oh, well, I think the library can be a real center of the community. I think one of the interesting things about it is that it serves all ages. Little children go for story time, and older children go for research, or just a place to be after school if they can't get home. And it can be many generations. I think one of the exciting things about the new library when it gets finished is that it's going to be really involved with so many different aspects that it should just draw people from all over the area for many different reasons. And I think that's very exciting.
So basically, you don't really have an involvement with the library aside from using it as a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, never volunteered in the library at that time.
So you're involved with your church, and I know you're involved with some other community organizations.
Well, definitely Lafayette Historical Society, and currently the Lafayette Improvement Association, which is an interesting historical collection. And looking through some of the old records, there was a quotation in the minutes of a meeting a long time ago, which I presume was my grandfather, and it said, Mr. Flood said whatever, and I don't know what he said, but anyway. So that was kind of an interesting connection. And growing up, I certainly heard stories about the use of that building, the dances and activities that had gone on there. So I feel a connection that way, as well as being a part of the organization that basically owns the building. And then I'm also a trustee of the Alamo Lafayette Cemetery District. And that's a fairly new job for me. And I'm finding that very, very, very interesting. Again, there is a personal connection to
senior plot.
Yes, the family plot. And the family history or legend or whatever is that my great-grandfather and two of his brothers, that would be Philip Lamb.
Are those the three boys in the pictures?
No,
No.
that's my father.
Other side.
That's, yeah, no. Yeah. This would be my grandma Flood's father and two of his brothers. Did some grading, and I presume in the cemetery, the road in the cemetery. And their payment for that was 3 family plots. So there are 3 big family plots up there with various ancestors buried in them. And so I feel that connection too. So, but that's a very interesting job, and I really like the idea of things continuing. I find that it's really important to know your roots and where you come from and where how your community was established and those kinds of things. And I find that the things that continue on to be very satisfying to me.
I like the connection of everything.
Yes, I do too.
Find something. Now, are the LIA minutes with you? All the background information?
No, I don't have all of the background information.
Where is it all?
That's a good question. I think they were, I believe, in a filing cabinet that was in the small office in the building, and that has been moved, and I'm not too sure.
We should find out, because they could certainly be in the Historical Society space. It would be very interesting, being that it's a lot of history involved in that.
Yeah, that might be a very good idea to preserve them in that situation.
It'd be fascinating to kind of, because we know the basic history of the building, of that construction of that building, but just more details, and then what's happened since then.
Yes.
Because it is almost 100 years old.
It certainly is. It's coming up to that.
Now, you remember the 40s library, the little cottage. Do you remember the names of any people who were in that library or involved in that library at all?
No, not at all. No.
Now, what do you remember about the library we have today?
Interestingly enough, I don't remember when it was built. Oh, well, I guess I was busy teaching at the time, busy working, and didn't, I'm sure I must have been aware of it being built. But just that it was an exciting new thing.
Yeah.
This was probably one of the more modern buildings in
Sure.
town at the time, and so that it was, interesting to all people.
There's a neat old photo of Jenny Bickerstaff, or Margaret Bickerstaff, and her husband at the opening of the library, that 62 library.
I don't think I've seen it.
Before she died.
Yes.
So did you ever meet her?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I knew her.
She's an interesting lady.
She was very interesting. She and my grandmother were friends. Actually, she taught my grandmother for probably 1 or 2 years. And my grandmother was the oldest of her family, and finished the 8th grade and then stayed on for another year. And what she told me was that she was there to help and do piano and so forth. And recently I've found out that having the 9th grade in rural schools was an acceptable thing. So presumably she was doing 9th grade, and that was all of her schooling. But so she was her teacher, and they were friends, and knew each other forever. And I knew Mrs. Rosenberg as a child. I remember being in her home and being with her. And then later on, I know she attended the Presbyterian Church in Walnut Creek for a long time, but later on, when I was an adult, she attended the Methodist Church here in Lafayette, she and her husband. And so I knew her from that point of view, and still a very special lady.
I wished I'd known about her, because I could have met her in my youth, but I never had no idea.
I remember when I was in college, I was taking history course, California history, and we were supposed to get an oral history was one of the projects, and so I thought, well, why not interview her? And which I did, but because she was so in tune with the written history, what I got from her was not a true oral history, because she kept referring to things that had been written, and she had read this and there and so forth. And unfortunately, I was actually not able to use it for my project, but it was certainly interesting listening to her tell about it and what she had learned. And I do recall on one occasion, I believe it was at the church, that she did a presentation for a group of people, which was very interesting, but wonderful lady.
She had interesting stories. I mean, she kind of lived through the whole, I mean, she wasn't obviously there at the founding, but she was the connection between the modern age and the Browns.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, you know, quite an amazing lady.
Yes.
All right, now we're going to talk about the new library. And were you involved in any of the studies and the Vision 2000 and all of the stuff about the library that we're building now?
No, not directly in any way.
Okay. So why might the new library be important to you?
Oh, well, there are lots of reasons. Of course, being an active member of the Historical Society, I think that the history room is going to be exciting and a place for Old Betsy, and that Old Betsy can be appreciated by the whole community whenever they choose, and that will be fun. But I just like the whole idea of the consortium and all of the possibilities that are going to be a part of that building and the activities that can be happening there. It's very, very exciting, very exciting.
Why do you think that the citizenry of Lafayette has been so enthusiastic about this building? Kind of some of the things you just said, probably.
Right, yes. Well, I'm sure that those people who were involved in some of the planning really have been very in tune with the community, and so and asked for information and ideas, and I think that's been really helpful. When people feel as if they've been directly involved, of course they're going to be more excited about it than they would be if somebody else planned it and then said, here, this is for you. And I think that's a big part of it, but it certainly has developed a lot of enthusiasm. And I think the idea of the whole consortium has been really exciting. Like, this is something new and different. And if this, we can have this happen in our community, and maybe to be the first that would
Yep.
do this type of thing, and I think that's part of it.
What are you looking forward to the most?
Oh, well, right now is the completion and seeing it happen. But it's fun watching the construction too.
Isn't it neat to see? When I come down my hill, I can see off in the distance the building.
Oh, really?
And the roof is on, so it looks like. And today when I drove down that way, they had some metal stanchions in front of where the book room's going to be. I think it'll be where the awning is, or the front of the building.
Oh.
And then you can see there's things inside of the building now. So this next year is going to be fascinating. Take shape.
Well, I certainly hope that people are taking pictures of it as it progresses.
Well, Ann Meredith is. She sends
good.
out something every week.
Wonderful.
So
That's
it's really
wonderful.
nice.
Yes, because that was one thing I noticed. I really tried to follow the building of the new Spring Hill School, because I was in a position to we were up on the hill. We could watch the construction, and I enjoyed. I've taken all kinds of pictures of that process. But it is very interesting, and you don't get to see the insides of the building too often.
No,
So that's
I lived through it.
right.
Now, it was said that the internet would kill the printed word and libraries would become obsolete. So how's our library going to avoid such a fate?
Well, I think our library is going to encompass everything that's new and modern, and have books as well as whatever the latest creations might be in the electronic era. I mean, this is, I think that's one of the things that's exciting about it too, that it's going to be open to that. It's not saying we are only going to do one thing, but we are going to do as much as we possibly can to help our community, and the possibilities of activities, especially for children and young people, are very exciting, as well as, adults and older citizens.
How do you think the library will enhance the sense of community?
Well, I think because it's going to have a place with meeting rooms and such a variety of activity, I think it will draw people for different reasons. In that way, actually, people will maybe meet someone that they haven't met before, and develop a sense of community in that way. People from all over the community are coming for this activity, or maybe a speaker or some special thing. And I really think that hopefully will be a drawing card for everybody, basically a center of the community. We really don't have much in the way of public buildings that draw people from all neighborhoods now, and I think it should do that.
We're going to have a cafe, too.
Oh, well.
We hope we are. We're sending out a request for quotes or something to see if there's anyone who's interested in. So you can actually, like at Barnes & Noble, you'll be able to sit in a chair and look through magazines and have a cup of coffee.
Yes.
That'll be kind of nice. Is there anyone you can think of who we should be talking to about this library and that we may not have thought of already? I mean, if you don't, but just...
Not offhand.
Okay.
No, not really.
Anything else you want to add?
No, except the whole project is exciting, and I look forward to the completion.
Great. Okay. That's super.